So should you be using Spring Coil or Berserker's Call? Which is the better trinket, and are there different scenarios that you should be using them in? Let's cover the 101 because I get this question maybe like 3 to 5 to 10 times a day on some days. So let's just cover it. I think there's a lot of confusion about the use of these trinkets and why I personally really highly value Berserker's Call right now actually. So yeah, let's get into the video. Okay, now the thing to keep in mind with Spring Coil versus Berserker's Call is that one is an active trinket and one is a passive trinket. So that's the thing that confuses a lot of people. They look at the stats and they just think of it as a constant thing, but that's not the way trinkets work. So the big advantage of a Berserker's Call over Spring Coil, for example, is that you control when this active comes up. So if this is a mob, I can stack it with the attack of when I'm using the rest of my cooldown. So I can be like, okay, I have Lust going now, I have my trinket proc going, I can time this with Mongoose as well. So you're stacking all these cooldowns at your ideal window, and that's a big advantage of having a trinket like Berserker's Call. You multiply this damage bonus by even more because you're stacking up with your Bloodlust, your Blade Flurry, and all your other cooldowns at the exact perfect timing. It's not like Spring Coil where you're relying on hoping that it procs at that exact timing. And a lot of times it's not going to have that perfect overlap with when you want it to be proccing exactly. So that's one big advantage with the active versus passive trinket that you have to consider. Now the other thing that really makes it confusing for people is that the timing of the fight really changes how active trinkets in particular perform. So the big difference here is I've got Berserker's Call equipped right now. So think of this stag as a boss mob. So if this is a boss mob and I'm going up and I'm attacking him, and I use my active trinket now, I'm getting all that benefit of this buff, right? As long as this buff is active, I'm getting all this benefit, and I'm still getting all this benefit while this buff is going on. But as soon as the buff ends, that's when active trinkets aren't as powerful, right? Because now it's on cooldown for another 1 minute 40 seconds and I don't have any active buff from it. So it's just, there's nothing beyond the passive stats. And that's when it's losing its power. But if the fight ends right after I used it anyway, I'm not losing DPS because I'm not fighting the boss anymore. So that's a scenario where that's why I say fight length is so important when it comes to thinking about trinket usage, because if it's a 1 minute fight, for example, and you literally just engage the mob, get your buffs up, and then blow everything, and then the fight ends, that's perfect, right? It's kind of like a rogue in Hydro on the first pull. Imagine if Hydro was only one pull, and you get to blow your Adrenaline Rush, your Blade Flurry, everything. For that one pack, you do great DPS, right, Rogues? But then for the rest of Hydro, you kind of suck because you're waiting for your Blade Flurry to come back up, your Adrenaline Rush to come back up for all the waves. So it's kind of like that. Think of it like that, where on Hydro, on the waves where you have cooldowns, you're great. On the waves where you don't have cooldowns, you kind of suck. So it's kind of like that with active trinkets. When you have the active up, it's great. When you don't have the active up, it's losing DPS. So this is something you always need to consider with active versus passive trinkets, is if the fight ends right after a usage of the active trinket, so like let's say you use the Berserker's Call, the fight ends like 20 seconds later, you've got an ideal optimal usage of that active trinket and it's gonna perform way above its DPS value because you're not getting the downside of the active trinket. Okay, now the other thing to keep in mind when it comes to Spring Coil usage and why I really like picking up Berserker's Call right now is armor pen cap issues. So right now you shouldn't be armor pen capping unless you have both the rings right now. So you have Illidan ring and you have the ZA ring. I don't have them, so I'm not using them right now. But if you have the 2 armor pen rings, and then you have the Slayer's hands as well, and then you have the Slayer's shoulders as well. So that's 4 items of armor pen. If you have those 4 items, you're still underneath the armor pen cap on the lower armor cap armor bosses. But if you have more than that, you're getting into danger territory. So if you have more than that, for example, if for some reason you don't have Arcanite Steam Pistol and you swap that out for the ZA, I believe it's a bow with armor pen, or if you don't have the Supremacist neck and you swap that out for the trash neck with armor pen, now you're getting into danger territory because I believe the number is just over 700-ish, 708 off the top of my head, armor pen, where you're actually overcapping your armor pen versus a fully debuffed raid boss. So yeah, it's very easy to hit armor pen once we start moving into next phase, or if you're substituting in that 5th armor pen item this phase. So right now, not too much of a worry, but next phase is going to become more of a worry with more armor pen coming in. So once you start getting that issue, that's when you might start thinking, okay, it might be time to start swapping out the Spring Coil now, because the proc isn't getting that full value. And that's when that Berserker's Coil comes in even more. Okay, now the last thing to keep in mind with your Berserker's Coil is that active trinkets work really, really well on trash, because you can have full control when you pop that active, and you can combine it with Blade Flurry. And Blade Flurry by itself is just a really, really good trash tool. And if you get optimal Blade Flurries, it's a big difference in trash damage at the end of the day. So by having an active that you can control exactly when you proc it, I can be like, okay, the second mob is in range now. Okay, let's go. So I pop my Blade Flurry and I get stunned. And I have that Berserker's Coil going with the Blade Flurry for that really optimal kind of infusion of trash DPS. So yeah, those are kind of the reasons why Berserker's Coil is a lot better than a lot of people think, once you actually analyze the reasons why a lot of times you might want to use that active trinket over the passive. Okay, now that said, don't take this as me saying Spring Coil is bad, because it's a passive trinket, and in particular for someone who wants a lazier style of gameplay, they want less to think about. If you're someone that forgets to use your active trinket regularly or isn't timing your active trinkets effectively, Spring Coil is a good kind of overall trinket that's still going to perform well in a lot of situations, because it's not on you to remember to use your active really well. But if you're someone that controls your active usage really well, I really like Berserker's Coil, because it lets me use it effectively for the exact timings when I want to use it. Alright, so I hope this explanation helped you out and helped you understand the power of active trinkets versus passive trinkets a little bit better. And as always, guys, I have to thank all of you guys on Patreon who support me. If you like to help support these videos where I make just informative videos, no clickbait, no BS, I appreciate it, and you can help support me on Patreon. And in exchange, you get things like my UI templates, my weak auras for rogues, and other goodies and extra guides. So thank you so much, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.